Quick note, Sharon and I will be leaving immediately after the last Amen. I'll be preaching in Redfield immediately following this service. So on Facebook, a little bit back, I asked for ideas, had good response, and you can still give me ideas on what you'd like to have preached. This is one of those ideas that was requested. The actual request was about grief and anger. And so I'm going to give you a presentation along that line. If I miss what you had in mind by too much, then send me a private message and we'll work on it and we'll do another one 6 months later. That's one of the things that's difficult about asking somebody, say, well, tell me about the Holy Spirit. Okay. There's a lot of territory there. I'm not sure what you had in mind, but I'll give it a shot and we'll see what happens. So we want to find God in our grief, because when grief hits, and I'm talking about some pretty intense times, and it does not have to be the loss of somebody. It feels like the world just keeps on going without you, and it does. And for a time, your world seems to stop. This grief can come from a lot of different events. Obviously, the death of a loved one is pretty self-explanatory, but it can be the loss of a dream. It can be the loss of future plans. It can be the close of your factory. It can be going through midlife crisis can cause some grief. It can just be getting old and finding out you can't do what you used to do, and you're kind of stuck watching more than you are participating now. There's just a lot of places grief can come from, and we do make a mistake if we think it only comes from those activities that involve the funeral home. The Bible never pretends that life is painless and never tells us to pretend life is painless. Your grief is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are simply human. You should not try to run away from it or deny it. It's just part of life. We all go through it. So our important thing is where our grief takes us. Is it going to take us closer to God? Is it going to shape us? Is it going to make us better? Is it going to make us bitter and resentful? And people choose both paths quite commonly. So your grief will shape you. I have no doubt about that. Its question is, what kind of shape are you going to take in the process of your grief? But it doesn't have to consume you. It is a process that you move through. And the more significant the event, the longer it can take to move through. And everybody's a little different, so there's no one single answer for everybody. Everybody has to take their own path and make that journey. And once you do go through the grief, it does not mean that you've forgotten the past. It does not mean that from time to time you still miss things in the past. That's not what we're saying. It's just that you've learned how to stand and move forward with the situation as it is now. So God understands our grief a lot better than we do. Words tend to fail. It's just like nobody really understands. It's really hard to put into words. Sometimes in intense cases, the best thing you can do is just be present. You don't have to say profound things, and incidentally, I think it's us men who are more desirous to say something really profound because we want to fix it. Men want to fix things, and you see somebody's heart, they're breaking, it looks like their life is falling apart. Oh, we want to fix it. But we can't. There's no fixing it. Sometimes all you can do is just show up and say, I'm praying for you, brother. You're in my heart, sister. And just be present. Don't always look for words. In Isaiah 53:3, let's read this one. This is about Christ. And he did know about sorrows. This is not something that is like, oh, God doesn't understand it. He's never been there, and so on and so forth. He was despised, forsaken of men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hid their face. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. He understood what it was like to be on the rejected side of society. He knew what it was like to have grief in the Garden of Gethsemane, where his sweat was as drops of blood. Hebrews 4:15 tells us that he was tempted in all aspects just as we are. And so he's a high priest who can relate with us. He understood the ins and outs of life. And even though the very specific details about your life may not be specifically recorded about Christ, he knew. He understands. Don't make the mistake of thinking my grief is the only grief like this ever in all humanity. Of all 106 billion people that live, no one has ever sorrowed as I've sorrowed. That kind of thinking is just going to make things worse and worse. It's just going to muddle up your mind. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels like the worst that ever happened. And if you could talk to other people, they would tell you the same thing. I thought my world was over. I thought my life came to the end. I thought this was the worst ever. And just go through that. Sit with that. Be honest about that. I don't want you to deny it. I just want you to be honest with it and move forward with Christ because He understands. So we don't have to pretend that everything is okay and all is well and my life is fantastic and it just can't get any better. Incidentally, there are parts of our life that are pretty fantastic. It can't get much better. It's kind of funny how we can have a whole lot of good stuff going on and we have a bad event and it erases out immediately all the good that's going on. I really don't have an answer for that because I think that's just the way the human mind works. It's kind of like the old story about the guy out hiking. He's got beautiful mountains, beautiful weather, beautiful sunshine, but he's got a pebble in his boot. He's miserable the whole time because one little thing is wrong. Life is never going to be 100% perfect all the time. Somewhere in there, we have to learn how to balance those things. And God knows that we are working on this balancing act. And the emotional part is really, really hard. So all our faithful Christian friends, they're going to hurt and suffer at times. This is what we do. I didn't put it together. I didn't design it. I don't know why it works that way. But I know that when life hurts, we suffer. And what we need is a community of people around us that will help us get through it. Now, that community of people can't fix it for us. Nobody can fix it for us. The fix we would have, if it was our choice, is we're going to go back in history 3 or 4 or 5 days. We're just going to stop that from happening. And then we're going to move forward and it just never happened. But you can't do that. When it happens, it's happened. And now we have to learn some new skills and some new attitudes. So what we want it to do is to draw us nearer to Christ. We don't want to let our anger and our pain and our hurt push us away from Christ. Now, that temptation is going to be there. It's absolutely going to be there. And if you feel anger toward God, I know a lot of Christians feel really bad about that. I don't have deep theology on this, but I'm just like, God put you together. He created your emotions. He understands. And if you'll keep pressing forward, you'll get through it and you'll get over the anger. Psychologists tell us that anger is a common phase of grief. It's one of the 4 common. You can do some other studies and get up to 13 phases, but it's one of the 4. And when somebody's had an extreme loss, they'll be angry at God. They'll be angry at the trash man. They'll be angry at the cat. They'll be angry at everybody because that anger is just there. It hurts, and it's going to come out at somebody. And all I can promise you is God's big enough to handle your anger. You're not going to hurt God as you're going through the anger. Don't let it make you perpetually bitter. Don't let it make you push Him away where you never, ever come home. Anger is just part of the grief. I don't think it's sinful by itself. Anger says in Ephesians 4:26, be angry and do not sin. Haven't we all been angry at someone we love and hold dear and cherish and would die for, but in the moment we're angry at them? That doesn't mean we hate them. That doesn't mean we want to reject them or divorce them or kick them out of our family or write them out of the will. That doesn't mean any of that. We're just in a place where we're angry. Something didn't go the way we wanted it to go, and now we're angry. And anger wants a target. And somebody pray for the kitty cat or the dog that walks by when you just got to let it out. There's been a lot of pets take a lot of anger because they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'll let you decide whether kicking the cat is a sin or not. I won't go there. But you're going to be angry. And we're going to understand it when it's an extreme event. So as a minister, if I come by and I'm visiting you and you've just lost a loved one and I happen to catch you in the anger phase, I am not getting ready to have a theological discussion with you about how, no. That we can do that 2 years later, maybe, but we're not doing it right now. That's just not the time and place. This is just what we go through. Or let's say it wasn't a loss, but let's say you were in a tragic accident. We know people like this. They lost a limb, lost a leg, lost an arm. That's going to be something that aggravates you the rest of your life. And even if it's been a few years later and I come by to visit and I catch you in an angry moment because you only got one arm, I ain't going to argue with you. I got two. I can't fuss with you about that. But I'm not going to say that just because you go through those moments of anger and frustration because life didn't work the way you wanted it to, that it's necessarily an evil weakness on your part. Again, I would just say it's humanity. Be honest with it. God knows what's in your heart. Don't pretend like everything's A-okay and I got this. No, sometimes we need to lean on one another. Psalms 13:1. Let's turn back to Psalms 13:1. David didn't seem to have problem releasing some emotions towards God that we're not always cheery and upbeat. Here's a Psalm of David. He says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all the day? How long will my enemy be exalted over me?" How do you think David's feeling there? He's hurting, isn't he? And he's wondering, I'm going to put it in a little more modern language, Lord, where are you? I thought you were on my side. I thought you had my back. How long, O Lord, will you forget me? He's feeling forgotten by God. How long will you hide your face from me? He's hurting. And we're going to hurt. Different times in life, we're going to sit around and wonder the same thing. And some of us have bought a lie where if I'm Christian, my life will unfold beautifully. That is a lie. That is never in the Bible. It says you're Christian, you're going to get your childhood dreams. You're going to get the white picket fence, and the little house and the flower box out front. And you're going to get to sit on the rocking chair with your loved one that you've been married to for 92 years, and reminisce. So, no, it's not in the Bible. And if you think Christianity gives you that promise, then you've just set yourself up for some more pain and anguish. James 1:10 tells us to be careful. The wrath of man does not work the righteousness of God. So again, I can't tell you when you have an extreme loss, don't ever be angry. All I'm going to tell you is when you realize you're angry, be careful the direction you let that anger go. And I think probably the best thing to do is just take it to God in prayer. Because Philippians 4:6-7, be anxious in nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication. And just take it to the Lord. I'm feeling pretty angry right now, Lord. I know I'm about to do something stupid if I don't vent a little bit. And He's big enough to listen and hear your pain. So somebody said this a long time ago, give God all the broken pieces and He can put it back together. Actually, the saying goes, not even God can fix a broken heart if you don't give Him all the pieces. But if you give Him all the pieces, then God can fix a broken heart. So eventually anger can become wisdom. And it does. Now, it's slow. It takes sometimes years. But eventually the anger goes away and it can become wisdom that you share with other people. And now you're equipped as one who's been down that road to help somebody else who's just now entering that road. And now your experience from the past becomes wisdom that helps somebody in the present. And that's a blessed place to be. I don't want advice from somebody. So, let's say I lose my mate. I'm not going to an 18-year-old looking for advice. I'm like, come on, that doesn't make sense to even say that. I'm going to talk to people I trust who've already been down that road that I'm just starting. And if they've been smart enough to have the years to let that turn to wisdom, that's exactly who I want. because they can't fix it for me, and they can't take my hurt away, and they can't bring my loved one back, but they can show me how to navigate that. They can give me some insights to make that, and thus it becomes wisdom. So we ask ourselves, what's our anger growing into? Where are we letting it take us? Because we're letting it take us somewhere. It is going to take you somewhere. Question is where? That's what I want to know. Then we have the opportunity to begin again. Grief is not a required to be the end. Now, I understand it can still feel that way for a while, but it's not the end. I don't know how many years you're going to have left after whatever grief you're thinking about, but certainly grief was not the end. You learn to be happy in new ways is the phrase I like. Joseph, he had a lot of grief. He had it early on. Brothers threw him in a pit, sold him into slavery. Potiphar's wife, the things she pulled, and he ends up in prison. He had a lot of reasons to quit and say, well, it's the end. But he just looked around where he was. And he said, I'll make the best of what I got. He made the best of what he had. And then, of course, things changed and doors opened. Now, they don't always open like Joseph, right? That's not the way it always turns out. But he did build on his past. He didn't deny it, and I don't think he should get into denial. He just simply built on it. And later on, toward the end of his life, when his brothers came to him, it's in Genesis 50, trying to be sure they were safe, he said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And there's a lot of grief that turned into wisdom right there, and Joseph had it. So what you do is you take the first step. That's the best advice you're going to get. Take your first step, whatever that is. And it's not like a formula that everybody gets the same steps. You're going to have to kind of find your own step. And some of those early steps are you have to go through the grief. You have to let the tears come, and you have to let them flow. There's no healing in trying to stuff it down and pretend you're a big boy. Big boys don't cry, chin up, suck it in, buttercup, and all that. There's no. That's all right if you got a little sprained thumb or a little bruise or you got bumped on the basketball court. But when we're talking about significant grief, don't play that game. If you just need to go sit down and find a private place to cry for a while, sometimes that's part of the healing process. You're going to have to take those steps and just start working your way through a little bit at a time. And when we're talking about significant losses, I understand from study, from research, it's going to hit you at times you never know. The best example I know of is simply an illustration. But you're walking through the grocery store and you see the Jif peanut butter, and that was their favorite peanut butter. And all of a sudden, right there in the middle of Walmart, you're in the middle of the big boo-hoo. Let it. Just let it. Let the heart let out what the heart needs to let out, and honor the moment. We can't go back. I know that. But we can learn to be happy in new ways. And the guy I got that phrase from was going blind. By this time, he probably is totally blind. And he said, I'm just learning how to be happy in new ways. I thought, wow, that's kind of neat coming from a guy that was losing his sight. Our grief can open some new doors. Sometimes God has to rattle our cages pretty hard. And so grief gives you some opportunities you didn't see before. And then can we continue to trust God in our pain? Job said, we used this in the earlier lesson, even though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Easy to say in a Bible class, isn't it? Easy to sit in a sermon and hear. Well, if you're in the middle of some really hard grief, that's a different story, isn't it? So when you're hurt, you're not inferior. The faithful do not cry less. The faithful cry. Even Jesus wept. Now we debate why he wept at the tomb of Lazarus, but Jesus wept. And he never got on to anybody for weeping in a time of sorrow. Paul begged God 3 times to take the thorn of flesh away. Go back and look at 2 Corinthians 12:8. Now, we don't like the word beg so much, so your translation may say, Paul beseeched God 3 times. Paul begged for it. He wanted that thorn gone. He was hurting. He was grieving the situation he was in. And God said, no, I think you need to keep that one. It's going to be good for you. So don't measure yourself by some crazy assumptions you have. We look at the apostle, we put him up on a pedestal. I kind of think he belongs on a pedestal. We can argue that later. But, we look at him and go, oh, he handled it all so well. No, he begged. And then later in that text, no, it's chapter 11, after he lists a lot of his suffering, he talks about his frequent concern for the churches and having been in tears often. What you don't want to do is drive by somebody's house and they got the nice house, they got the brick house, and they got the nice car out, and they may have a toy or two out there, and the lawn's all cut, and they got the little flowers growing, and everything just looks perfect, and you go, man, they're handling life well, aren't they? And you don't have a clue what's in their heart, because we make those assumptions based on 3-minute meeting in the foyer. Somebody's just went through something horrible. We meet them in the foyer and say, how you doing, brother, sister, and so, and they go, I'm doing fine. That's the end of the conversation in the foyer. And we go, wow, they've got it made. Now don't measure yourself by that little 2-second. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors and how hard they're hurting and how many times they cried themselves to sleep on a now half-empty bed. Don't pretend to know what other people are going through and then beat yourself up because you're not hitting that imaginary level. You're not inferior when you're hurt. You just keep turning back to God. Keep going back to Philippians 4, 6, 7. You just take it to God. God, I'm hurting. When is it going to end? How long is it going to keep going on? Grief can slow you down sometimes, but that's not failure, and it doesn't have to stop you. Maybe God needed you to slow down. Maybe you got too tied up in the world. I don't know. I'm just guessing. There's a lot of things we won't know. But we got Job on the ash heap, and Job's one of our biblical heroes, right? Even though Job, in the midst of his grief, says, why wasn't I stillborn? That's in chapter 3 if you want to look it up. David's hiding in caves from King Saul, trying to figure out what in the world he did wrong because King Saul's trying to kill him. Hannah's childless. She's just so distraught she couldn't even eat at the sacrificial meal. She's off over at the tabernacle doing some praying, or tent, whatever they had there at that particular time. Jeremiah, he's in all kinds of crazy hurt and in ruins. And they even dropped him in an empty cistern and left him to die. He's hurting. They're all hurting. They're all in pain. They're all sorrowful. And God didn't go, hey, you're no good. You're not what I'm looking for. He didn't mark them off. He didn't play strike one, you're out. He listened. He strengthened. And he restored, sustained them. These are all people that we admire. There was even Elisha or Elijah. I get the two mixed up. But he was so tired of it all, he wanted to die. And he just said, Lord, it's enough. Take my life. And God said, you're not done yet. But that's how tough his grief was. Healing is not a solo act. Grief causes people to withdraw. Romans 12:15 says, you weep with those who weep, you rejoice with those who rejoice. But some of us, and I don't know why it is, but I think it would be fair to say that would be my tendency, is to want to withdraw when in times of just really deep pain. Now, there are other people that don't. Their tendency is, I need to be at church. I got to be at church. I can't miss church. And so we got both sides of the spectrum here. And we see it here. We see, a death happens, and next service or two, the grieving family's not here. We see a death happen, and the very next service, the grieving family's here. I don't want to step in and do judgment on that. I just know we have different responses on how we want to deal with it. But I do know that to totally withdraw, that's not wise. We need each other to help heal. Now, you get to choose your others. Not all 75 of us got to be showing up at the same time offering counseling. We just need to bear one another's burdens. And that's where we all need our inner circle, where we're really, really connected with an inner circle. I know the technical word is clique, and clique has a negative connotation, but we need our little happy cliques where we have those few people. It doesn't have to be a lot. 3 or 4 be fine. That I can call anytime I need to, because if I don't talk to somebody, I'm going to get crazy and do something really stupid. I need a little balance in here. I need those people in my life. And I will say this, Complementary. You ladies are far better at it than us men. Psychologists tell us that women survive the death of a husband far better than men survive the death of their wife. Now, one of the reasons is because you ladies have the wisdom where you have more of a social circle, where you really talk about things that mean important things to one another. You know what guys talk about when they get together? How about that football game? I'm sorry, football game's okay, but there's not a lot of emotional depth there, for dealing with life crises. Can you believe what they're doing in Washington? That bunch of, okay. I like to discuss those things too, but it's really not the core what we need. It's not very often you have a guy call a guy and go, look, my heart's breaking. I don't know what I'm doing. I got to talk to somebody. And the other guy on the end go, hey, let it go. It's all right. I'm here for you. Now for the guys, they're going, ooh, that's kind of weird. That's what we need. We got to have community. So grief should not grow us into an isolated state. That's not healthy for us. Our dark imaginations start running crazy when we don't have somebody to kind of knock us upside the head a little bit and get us to think straight. And we can really, dark imaginations go crazy. So our family matters. Hebrews 10:24, consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. 25 says, not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, but let's focus on 24. We need to consider one another. We need to be aware of one another, what we're going through and how we're going through it, and then connect and just take the littlest baby step. That's all it takes. And then one baby step and another, and before you know it, you've gotten pretty far down the road. But don't wait till you're healed to try to connect, because it ain't going to happen. You may numb it, you may shove it down, and some people, that's their tactic, but I don't think that's wise. Last slide. The Lord walks with the wounded. He's not afraid of you when you're hurting or when you're really just lost and so tumultuous you don't know what you're even thinking. He's good. He's infinite. He's powerful. He can do that. And he knows that grief can change us. He just wants to be sure it happens in a good way. It can soften some parts in our heart that were too hard. And some people are too hard, aren't they? Well, they're sitting around like, well, if I was so-and-so, I would. If I this, I would that. I'm like, go ahead and talk. Until you're there, you don't have a clue what you would do. And you don't. You can fantasize what you would do when you were in whatever situation. The fact of the matter is you'll never ever know till you're in that situation, right? Then it can reveal some tenderness we didn't know existed inside of us, and sometimes it does. Some people have some beautiful things in their heart. They just hadn't had the opportunity to bring them out. And working with somebody else or walking with somebody else in grief is that opportunity. Again, God created all your emotions. You are not going to feel anything that surprises God. You're never going to have an emotion where God says, wow, I didn't see that one coming. He knew it. He put it all together, and he knew all the possibilities. And he knows you better than you know you. And so he understands. Your healing's not going to be a single moment. It's a journey. And it can be days on some events. It can be months and years on some events. There's just too much variation there to nail it down any tighter than that. But what Satan wants anger to do is to grow you lonely and bitter. That's what he wants. You fight back against that. You hold to God, you speak honestly, you keep walking, you trust that God knows every tear, and he knows the way forward. And if you'll keep trusting that, you'll go forward. So the past will remain part of your story. Amen. We can't change that. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to control the ending. You're still in control of the ending. And when you walk with Christ, even more so. So last question. Are you walking with Christ? If so, stay the course. If not, let us help while together we stand and sing.